Good day, everyone. So let's talk about Yae Miko and why she's amazing and why some popular opinions on YouTube have completely gotten her wrong. In order to understand my argument as to why Yae Miko is actually such a good character, we need some sort of reference or some sort of framework to understand why everyone has got her wrong currently. And I think nothing can explain it better than the following chart, which is effectively a chart that matches effectiveness versus skill, as you can see here. And what this chart says is, well, basically, if you've got a team with a certain number of artifacts, talents, and constellations, and so on, your team has got a minimum and a sort of maximum effectiveness. And basically, the more skilled you are, so in other words, this little x-axis here, the more skilled you are, the more sort of you can get out of your team. And this is the intuition behind the little green curve, as you can see here. Apologies if anyone's colorblind, but you can see here the more and more knowledge you've got, the more and more like you can execute your abilities properly in the correct order. You can iframe, you understand elemental gauge theory, rotations, etc., etc. The more highly skilled you become, well, the more you get out of your team. But of course, we know that sometimes people are just going to go random buttons go brrr, and they'll do all sorts of crazy things, and they might end up with like an effectiveness that's like right here. And this is why I've overlaid this little consistency chart just to sort of say, well, how often or how consistent can you get this little outcome right here? And obviously random buttons go brr is not a very consistent strategy. And this is what a lot of people have found, that if you play your abilities and your team and you've got everything sort of worked out and you do all the correct things, then not only is your effectiveness going up, but also the consistency of you getting, let's say, good clearing time in a spiral burst or a high score in some of the events, like I think in the study of potions events and so on. And obviously there comes a point where if you're really, really skilled in Genshin Impact, in other words, every single little button press is calculated, time to perfection, all all the reactions and so on, you can get very highly effective. But there's obviously a point where the RNG in the game, let's say the particle generation, the enemy's AI, all sorts of other little things can sort of hamper your maximum effectiveness. And this is also what I call the little showcase trap. In other words, this little region here where people spend hours and hours trying to get the maximum effectiveness, and perhaps once in 5 hours they've hit 7 million damage with Eula, and they've got the recording, they're going to post it on YouTube, and wow, oh my god, look how amazing it is. But it's not really consistent, so that's why you've got this sort of drop off here. And the same goes for other things like solo no damage runs. Yes, in effect you could use someone like Ayaka and bypass the need for shields, healing Bennett, and almost any other sort of support, but it's not a really good consistent strategy. By the way, lots of solo no damage runs on the channel, do check them out. So what is the situation with Yae Miko? Now I know we took a bit of a detour, but this is the situation. Up until I would say roughly about this point in terms of your skill curve, let's say here where it says high, I completely agree with everyone in terms of the fact that you need to triple E, and then once you've triple E'd, you need to do your Q and then triple E, and it's kind of clunky, and you know you get hit while you do your skill, and why doesn't it refresh like Kokomi's jellyfish? I get those arguments. They are good arguments. They do apply when you are in this sort of skill bracket. The problem is when you move out of this skill bracket, those arguments don't apply anymore. And I think we need to talk about characters when we're really at the high to almost like a maximum skill ceiling. And you might say, well, why does the conversation around a character's viability need to be around like effectively using that character? Well, if you don't have a conversation at this high level, then effectively the margin for error that gets sort of introduced by having less skill and the RNG and the randomness effectively makes the talks kind of break down. It's almost like, yeah, there's so much margin for error and consistency issues in this sort of skill range that it's not really that meaningful. And this is why some people ironically have said, oh yeah, Miko becomes so good with constellations. Well, duh, if you've got more constellations, you're raising your minimum to like be higher and your maximum to be higher. So obviously she becomes better and better and she feels better with constellations. That's the whole point of constellations. But for a C0 Yae, my argument is that once we get to a proper sort of skill level, we can effectively understand a few fundamental things about her. And these fundamental things include the fact that if used properly, she saves you on your stamina. She allows you quick repositioning on the field. She gives you that consistent damage that consistently ticks, and no other character in Genshin Impact so far can give you that high level consistent burst tick damage whilst almost being AFK. And I think nothing can demonstrate these principles better than me going into a Spiral Abyss and showing you how Yae Miko's effectiveness can be drawn out through a combination of high skill and a bit of game knowledge. And this is all going to be with reference to what I call the Yae Miko Taser Dance team, and it is an incredibly fun free-to-play team. So let's get into it. The Taser Dance team is all about using Fischl and Yae Miko to quickly reposition yourself around the field, and this team is incredibly fun and fluid to play, but the basic rotation with it is you just use Fischl E, Kokomi E, pass TDS to Yae Miko triple E, Sucrose Swirl, Yae Miko Q, Yae Miko triple E, you go back to Kokomi, you attack until you've got 1 second left on Bakekorage's cooldown, you swap to Fischl, swap back to Kokomi, recast Bakekorage, pass again TDS to Yae Miko, then you swirl with Sucrose, then you press Q with Yae Miko, and you won't have some Kokomi's elemental burst ready, but that's sort of the general playstyle. And to make this work, you need to understand iframing. You need to understand how to manage your iframing and stamina properly. So if you guys don't know what iframing is, it's essentially what you can see on screen. It's the ability for us to avoid damage by pressing the dash button at the correct moment. And this is incredibly powerful, but it's got a bit of a downside. And that downside is, well, not everything can be iframed. And the second thing is, you're not doing any real damage while you're busy iframing. And this is what makes Yae Miko so unique. Well, essentially, see, if you can time it properly, her E saves you stamina, but not only that, whilst you are busy dodging the enemy, her totems are hitting the enemy in the background. And this is what's so cool. So suddenly that fluidity that Yae Miko gives you off-field damage and the ability to position quickly, save stamina, and to avoid enemies. And look, you can see here, we've been infused with Pyro, but we managed to sort of effectively iframe it without taking damage. It's pretty cool. But you guys might say, well, you know, this is all just theory and stuff, but we can make it really, really practical. And with this, let me just show you 2 examples. And I will cut this first example a bit short, but you'll see sort of a basic rotation playing out. Fischl E, Kokomi E, triple E with Yae, and then Sucrose quick animation cancelling. That's for all the experts out there. There's your Yae Miko elemental burst, E, 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 and then you'll go to Kokomi and you'll repeat the loop and so on. And you might say, well, we talked about consistency, and at this point, the Premier Bishop essentially stood still. So what happens if he instead attacks us after we used like our Yae Miko elemental burst? Well, you'll see what happens on screen. Again, the quick little animation cancels, and now we're going to go into Yae Miko's elemental burst, and look at that, we've avoided all the damage. And you see what I mean by dancing around him? Like, this is the essence of it. This is what this team is so good in doing. We can reposition ourselves, so even if we place Kokomi's jellyfish somewhere on the field, it doesn't matter. I can quickly reposition to it, even if I'm knocked away. And this is what makes Yae Miko so powerful. And whilst all this is happening, her totems are ticking, 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 ticking in the background. There's no other character that does this. Beidou, you've got to essentially attack in order to trigger her. And the only other character is perhaps like Fischl, but the damage or the DPS output that Yae Miko provides essentially sort of outweighs that. And the cool thing is, the reason why we use Fischl is to generate that beautiful elemental particles. And you can also, and I don't know if you guys have been paying attention, but in the background here, we're not really struggling for energy on Yae Miko. Look at that. I mean, we've almost got our elemental burst ready again, and it's almost at the point of being ready. And this is the other cool thing about her. If you can time everything properly and manage this team well, you don't need a Constellation 1. In fact, a Constellation 1 is not about solving her energy problem. It effectively allows you to redistribute the substats on your artifact in order to do more damage. That is what her Constellation 1 is all about. It's not a problem that MiHoYo is sort of giving you the solution or selling you the solution to. I think that's a very naive take. Again, at the highest skill ceiling, when you can properly build teams and manage sort of what the intuitive feel is for how much energy you need. Constellation 1 is just really there to help accelerate your rotations and get better builds for your Yae Miko. It's a constellation that's about damage, not energy recharge. And I know some people will disagree, but I mean, honestly, after playing this Yae Miko Taser team, you know, the proof's in the pudding. So say what you want, it is there. And of course, like I mentioned in my previous videos, as you can see on screen, Kokomi, we just sort of tuned her down to be at an F2P level. So what does all this mean for Yae Miko? Well, essentially what it means is that people don't understand exactly what she's for or how to play with her, and I think because of that inherent skill gap that you need to, in order to make her effective, a lot of people are not going to understand like what her purpose is. She doesn't work, it doesn't really work that well with Bennett. She works amazing with Kuchosara, and I think there's a lot of frustration with people in the community in the sense that they can't fit this character into their existing teams. You know, it's almost like everyone just wants to judge a character that's not even fully that doesn't even have a full talent levels, and they want to compare it to what they've already got, and then they want to be like, oh well, if I can't replace her or put her into my new team, she's bad. It's like all these mindsets really need to like go out of the window. If you're going to make Yae Miko the star, you play a team like this. I'm not saying this is the only team, and I'm not saying this is a meta team, but you play a team that enables Yae Miko. And once you do that, you'll find that even as an F2P, you can very comfortably clear the Spiral Abyss and pretty much with 9 stars. And we've done it before on the channel, and it's just a testament to how awesome this character is. I really love Yae. She's absolutely amazing. But yeah, guys, that is it for this video. Hopefully you can understand my perspective, more so from the perspective of someone that tends to play at the higher end of the skill ceiling or like the skill curve. And with that, thank you for watching, and hope you guys have a lovely day. Cheers.